So, questions on lesson 2? Yeah.
I was just reminded that, you know, in treatment and science of mind, they've kind of gotten away from the negation step.
Yes.
And I did learn it when I first learned it some years ago, and but I noticed I don't use it as much. But why don't I? It's just a habit not to. But that was the original.
That's right.
Part of the steps. Yeah.
It was one of the reasons that I knew I had to teach the Emma material, because none of the New Thought traditions include that step anymore.
Yeah.
They all focus on the affirming.
Right.
None of them focus on eliminating what is keeping you in that other place.
Yes.
And so whatever word we use, negation, denial, elimination, dissolving, I don't care what the word is, but what was cannot continue to be in order for the what is and what we, what is true, what is real to actually be our experience. So we have to dissolve, negate, whatever. And I think part of the reason it fell away was because there is this term in the 12-step movement, denial is, a river. And, so you don't, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't accomplish anything. You're denying something, which is, and she talks about it in lesson 2. You can declare it to be gone while you're looking at it, and of course it's going to continue to be there because your inner vision is still focusing on it. Declaring something to be gone when you're focusing on what it, on its apparent reality, is not going to work. And that's what many of us have been taught to do, rather than go into that place of knowing there is no way this can be, because all this line of reasoning that I understand now, this set of appearances can't be what is. That can't, certainly can appear to be what is, but that is all it is. I was chatting with someone yesterday who said, "Just the facts, ma'am." And I said, "You understand the word fact comes from the Latin word facere, which means to make." Yeah, factory, factotum, all of that. So, fact is something we make. It is not truth. Yeah, so, if someone asks me about truth, I'll generally say, I will share the facts to the greatest of my ability, as clearly as I can, but if you want to hear truth, or if you're asking for truth, you really don't want to hear it. Because we know at a deep level what truth is. So just to be aware of that, facts and appearances are made up. Good. Any other questions on lesson 2 before we launch into 3? Yeah,
I had one. Right in the very beginning, we talked about learning by rote, the multiplication example.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if learning by rote, whether it's mathematics or spiritual principles, does learning by rote lead to codependent perfection?
That's a fascinating concept. I'm having a ball with it. I've already gone through 3 different kinds of educational frameworks in which there could be codependency as a result of learning by rote. That's fabulous.
Because
Makes sense.
I embellished the idea of learning by rote when I was in grade school.
Okay.
That was perfect for me because my mom was really, really strict. Everything had to be just so. And so this just fit the way I was being brought up, and it just felt very natural to me. On the other hand, as I've been learning principles of different cultures and faiths and this kind of thing, there's a lot of it that to learn it, I've been repeating it, and then I'm saying these lesson words over and over and over. It's the same thing as rote, but it has a totally different feel, and I think the feel is what changes it from codependency into something else.
Very nice. And part of what she's encouraging us to do is to follow the logic, follow the reasoning. I can do a lot of things most people don't think one can do because I know the reason and the principles involved, right? And so if this is the principle, I just need to take that and apply it over here, right? And it's the same kind of thing, right? When you have a way of getting behind what is trying to be taught to you, then what is being taught to you is no longer something layered over ignorance, it's now layered over understanding. And that's a huge part of what we're going to be working on and working with.
And that was the other thing, is there was I don't know, it's in lesson 3, I took that back.
Okay.
It's about understanding.
Yes. Yes,
And,
ma'am.
and because we're spirit, we know the truth.
Exactly.
And so when we read the truth, we know the truth,
And
and we
it
go,
resonates,
aha,
yes.
right?
It resonates, it
Yeah.
feels good,
Yeah.
it feels fitting. You know, I used to say feels right, but no, it isn't about right or wrong. It feels fitting, it feels, it settles into where it belongs in us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bear with me a second. Maybe I'm being too literal. We're all spirit, and all matter, therefore, is appearance or delusional, right? I see the same delusion that she does. You see the same delusion that I do.
So there's that video that I showed a while back and the workshop on Saturday that's very useful for this, and I could show it today if it would be helpful. But the guy is saying what we are seeing here is like an icon on a desktop. Okay? When you're looking at the icon on the desktop, you are not looking at the thing. You're not looking at the particular file. You're not looking at the document. You're looking at something that is symbolizing the document, right? Now, you don't want to put that icon in the trash because now you don't have access to the document. So you don't take it literally, you take it seriously. The train, you don't take literally, you take it seriously. So a train coming down the tracks, or a truck, or all of us seeing however many tables you see here. But that we have as a culture, we have agreed on some commonalities, and sometimes we have to learn those when we walk into a new situation. People walk into a computer shop and they have to learn what all those things are, right? Or they walk into a machine shop, or open the hood of your car. Many people now have no idea what they're looking at when they open up the car because of what they've done to them, right? And those kinds of things. But for those with a common vocabulary who have learned and who have understanding and principles around those things, they can either figure it out or they can see it, right? So we see what we have been trained to see. We perceive what we've been trained to perceive, and that is malleable according to our training and our thinking. So in that same video, the guy who's saying that we take the desktop icon seriously but not literally is saying that he does this thing with a hat. I should probably show you the video. So it's a three-dimensional hat projected onto a screen that he put together on one of the computer graphic programs, right? And he used the eyedropper to make sure all the colors were appropriate. And then he put shading on it. And so we look at a band in the shadow and we see it as brighter than it actually is. But when he takes the same color pixel bar and moves it up, it's the same color as the one in the light. It is not even projected as brighter. It is our eyes telling us it's brighter. And we have been trained to see that, not trained to see it being the same color. Does that make sense? So facts we make up from our training. There is no reality out there. However, we have agreed on certain things as being consistent, as long as we're familiar with them. Yeah. I remember when I was little, Mom said that she could make a red object look yellow or a yellow object look red. I was going, how can you do that? Right? And then this guy demonstrates it just with changing the shading and the lighting around it. Yeah. Yeah. Catherine, and then April? April, then Catherine. I don't care.
Go ahead.
I just keep going back to the Book of Miracles, and the only thing real is love.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is an illusion.
Very good. If you can perceive it, it's an illusion. That is the accurate statement. If the senses can perceive it, it is an illusion created for the senses, generated by the minds of many, in many cases, and by some minds individually, as in order to make sense of, to simplify. In the same way the icon on the desktop simplifies all of the bits and pieces, because the file that we want to look at is actually a bunch of on-off switches in a submicroscopic environment. And if we were going to have to change each one of those, we would never get anything done. That is what the original computers were, was changing each switch by hand, and then setting up systems that would do it for you. And more and more change. The systems got more and more complicated. Has this helped?
Real quick one. You are not really you. I'm seeing an appearance of a spirit.
You're seeing
or something.
Exactly. You're seeing two things. You're seeing something, a combination of things. You're seeing what you are projecting onto me, okay, and what I am projecting into the all that is. So it's a mixture of the two. What you are seeing is not what an Amazon in the rainforest would see when looking at me, because different cultural frameworks, different filters, okay? And what other people see is not what I see when I'm looking in a mirror. It was fascinating to me about that. There's always a difference between what I think I am expressing in the universe and what other people are perceiving through their own perceptual framework. And that's just, and that's true for all of us. So yes, every beingness, a plant or a person or an animal or even a rock, is expressing in a form in the space, in the universe, in space-time. And every perceiving being, which even rocks perceive, believe it or not, but very slowly, is perceiving from their own framework of thoughts, feelings, memories, trainings, whatever they've been fed in the way of a framework for perceiving.
If I assume the Christ mind, that mind that
Love it.
that is divine in nature, the I am.
Yes.
I am that I am.
Yes.
Would I see you differently?
Yes. You would. And that's one of the reasons. Huh?
Do we see you as light? Would
You
we
s-
see everything as light?
In the Christ mind, we see that which the person is expressing as, which this essence, the light essence is expressing, over infinite, not over space and time. So each pattern is unique, and it isn't just light, it is humanoid in the sense that because we've all agreed to be human beings, we have some of those qualities. But there is no masculine or feminine, there is no race or color or creed, there is that beingness. So the Christ sees that and negates any other appearance. When Jesus walks into the child in the room, the child's just sleeping. There is no death. Right? Lazarus was put in the tomb. Oh no, this is ridiculous. Open that tomb. Come on out, Lazarus. We go. There is no death. That's a negation. Right? So that he can, so that everyone else around him can experience what he sees.
It's pretty exciting, really, isn't it?
I think so.
Is this what Ernest Holmes, when he was talking about race consciousness, we all collude that you and I look at
Yep.
each other as humans and all of that,
But we've stopped using that word because of racism.
Well, it means human race.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
cultural consciousness also is different from humanities, the one mind of humanity.
Okay.
So we've got multiple layers of that. So the one mind of humanity sees trees and rocks and stones and human bodies and other critters, okay? And within different cultures, we see other things, okay? So we might not see certain snakes and insects and whatever just because we're not trained to see those, okay? But other peoples would see them, the biggest day for them, literally. Whereas they wouldn't see our electronic gadgets because it's, or the image in What the Bleep Do We Know, where they couldn't recognize the ships, right? Because who's ever seen a boat with big sails like that before? It doesn't exist. So it's a cloud on the horizon doing strange things to the water. Right? Yeah. So, Yes.
This is semantics, I think, but when I went through lesson 2 the first time, I really struggled with it because of the denial aspect and too many 12-step programs under the bridge. And this time when I went through it, I saw a distinct difference between denial and negation.
Good, that's why I used the word.
Because for me, with negation, I say, wait a minute, that can't be because, and I state the truth.
Nice.
But with denial, there is no because. It's just, I'm shutting it out, I'm blocking it out,
Nice.
I'm turning it off.
I'm refusing to see it.
I'm refusing to see it.
It may still exist, but I'm refusing to see it.
But with the negation, I acknowledge it, it's there, but I know I can say no. I'm negating this. It's not here. And
so you're acknowledging the
because-
experience of it, and you're negating the reality of it.
Yes.
Good.
But it's because there's a truth there that I can claim.
Yes. Good. That's why I replaced the word that is in most of Emma's works, which was denial, with the word negation. Yeah. That's why I did it. And more lately I'm using dissolving.
Okay.
Yeah. Dissolve the appearance. It's just an appearance. I have this wonderful thing in my mind of the Once and Future King, Walt Disney version, where Merlin and the witch meet. And they have a battle. And there's this old man and this old woman. And they are yelling at each other, and then they start using their wands, and then suddenly Merlin becomes a dragon, and whatever the witch's name becomes another dragon, and they're fighting each other, and then they wear out, and poof, they're just an old man and an old woman. But when they're being dragons, it seems very real. So that keeps coming to mind. All right. So we'll work more with lesson 2 as we move forward, and in lesson 3 we'll get some more reasoning, which will help make lesson 2 more effective. So,
well, I think many of us have had experiences where, doctors have told us something and we'll go, oh no, or I'm not doing that. I'm not taking this or that for what you tell me I have.
Nice.
And we make our decisions. We negate that, and we make our decisions, and we become healthy.
woohoo!
I know I'm not the only one at the table that's experienced it.
Love hearing that.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, indeed. All right, so lesson 3. This is Wednesday morning's practice, and during this week we're going to rotate 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so the top of lesson 3, first paragraph. Now is the time to choose the power or energy we would like to embody in ourselves. Isn't that lovely? And to work at it until all its characteristics are visible in us. We get to choose, and the more we focus on it and work with it, just like anything else, mathematics or running or anything, housework, it's something we master, and it becomes part of what we are doing, and we don't have to think about it. Okay, so the second paragraph is so important. Every objective to which we give our attention has its own possibilities ready to spring forth and fill us. We can take on any force by persevering in our attention to it. We can embody whatever we focus on continually. And in fact, we will. So it's whatever you are focusing on, you will embody. All right. And then she gives Simon Magus as the example, and I love it. He was observed to levitate 30 feet in the air after focusing on the levitating principle emanating from the earth. And there are Tibetan monks who have been known to do the same, and there is a wonderful set of stories around one of the ancient characters who, whenever he began to talk about Buddha and the glories of being free, he would just rise off the ground. Thank
There was
you.
a Catholic nun who was apparently so enamored
Saint
with Jesus,
Teresa.
and she was very ashamed of the fact she would just float up, and she didn't like
Of
it.
Avalon.
Right, yes, yes, and she would have to have something tied to her ankle
Yeah.
so she didn't float out the window. Yes, but yeah, so at the opposite end, at the bottom of that, St. Francis of Assisi showed the wounds called stigmata by focusing on such images. And the stigmata were not part of Catholic tradition until the early 1200s. The Dominicans came in the late 1100s, and St. Thomas Aquinas was a Dominican, and he brought in a whole different understanding of what this was all about. And the crucifixes started getting put up in the Catholic spaces. So the Roman Church began to focus on suffering at that point. It had not been part of the Roman Church prior to that point.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a whole different way of thinking about things. And the next paragraph, we also become like those with whom we associate, and she goes on and gives some specifics on that. And that last paragraph on the page, since God is spirit, the substance you long for is spirit, very well. Be spiritually happy, and the material shadows the affairs of your life must be happy. So when we choose joy, my talk on Wednesday night in Portland was, and joy is a verb. It's not a description, it's a verb, and we are the ones who do it. We choose to enjoy, right? And when we do that, then she has a story, and I think this is a story about her. She says, a beggar child looking through the window into a home of plenty, who can forget her physical misery because her mind is so happy, and can keep that up for 5 minutes, who can draw someone to her who can feed her body that very day. All right? There was a time during the Civil War, Emma's father was in the army and gone, and there were several children, and her mom couldn't manage the farm properly, and Emma became the mainstay of the farm. And it was very difficult for all of them. And I'm sure, there were huge famines in New England at that time, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, and I'm sure they went through some of that, and I'm guessing this is part of her experience. So that's that page. The next page, we can be filled with peace by feeling the ever-presence of everlasting peace. Okay? It's not about what's going on around us. We go inside and find that everlasting peace. When we find it, we are filled with it, and the world around us begins to align on who and what we are being. Okay? And the same with love. Those who fill their minds with the third lesson of Jesus, God is love, fill their paths with delight and joy. Now, you may recall that each lesson is going to have a quote, one from Moses and one from the Gospels, one from Genesis and one from the Gospels. This is the Jesus quote, God is love. Okay? So, now we get into an interesting concept, and we started to touch on it with the practice in lesson 2. We must have our eye single to the one only in order to be filled with that one. Okay? If I'm looking at 4 or 5 different kinds of possibilities, I'm going to get a mixed experience. But if I'm focusing on the one that I'm calling good, that I'm calling love, that I'm calling peace, whatever I'm calling it, I can be filled with it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Then if we go into the next sentence, such utter yielding is called meekness in the Bible. So to be meek, the meek shall inherit the earth. The people who are focused on divinity, where that is all that they are thinking about, feeling, looking for, experiencing, of course they're going to inherit everything. How could they not? They're going to experience having all that God is in every way. And she talks about being a magnet, and she quotes a few other people around that. And if we go to the next paragraph, but if we have occupied our thinking mind with what we shall eat or drink or wear or other such subjects, we become little more than mannequins. And this is what many people who we see in the media are. The The Kardashians fascinate me. Really.
They're playing their part very well,
I think
aren't they?
so. And I'm looking forward to seeing when they become more than mannequins. They're beautiful mannequins. They've done a lovely job with it.
I thought the Kardashians were the ones who were on some kind of science space thing.
I love it. It's one of the Star Trek folks.
I don't think so.
Yeah. In Deep
They're
Space
pretty
Nine, right? Yeah, the family here in this country is a group of women who've turned themselves into celebrities.
Oh.
And yes, you are remembering some folks in Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
I thought you were thinking of the Jetsons.
Oh, not that far back.
Don't age yourself.
So I know a number of people who are in their 50s who are wishing the Jetsons had been with the direction we had gone.
Really?
All right, so that's really important. What are we focusing on? And if things are starting to be kind of yucky, what have I been thinking about? What have I been focusing on? What have I been telling myself? Where have I been putting my energy? Where have I been opening to energy? What kind of energy? Okay, so here we get the Moses quote. Moses, who led the children of God, which is the true meaning of the word Israel, children of God, out of that darkness of Egypt, and founded the Hebrew nation, said that acknowledgement of the right and true God, known to us as our omnipresent good, is like a wind moving across the face of the waters for light to shine upon it. Thus, as we begin to occupy our thinking mind with divine principles and qualities, we feel the glow of the light from on high shining over and through the mind. Whenever we obey the call to look up and behold me, any opposition to the good is dissolved. Right? Yes.
What does Egypt mean?
For, using the Old Testament story in Exodus, Egypt is the place in which people experience bondage in darkness. And that's how it's used metaphorically in all of Emma's work and the Fillmore's work, and I think in Holmes's work as well. It's a metaphor for being in bondage in darkness. So that's interesting. We are having new versions of Egypt emerge in around the edges of our culture right now for us to undo. Yeah, very cool. All right. So last bottom of 40 going on to 41. Let us fill ourselves with the mystical stillness till our tongues are awakened. Let us turn our vision toward the author of omniscience until we are filled with our own right knowledge. Now this is something that she talks about in a couple of other places, that you have to go into the stillness and feel the presence in order for your words to have the power that results in people having changed circumstances. Right? So a huge part of, and there's a couple stories in here too where she describes how a healing happens. And in almost every case that she describes the healing, she talks about having been in the stillness and having spoken from that deep stillness and being in that place of oneness with the transcendent and immanent presence. Yes? All right. Now, this is why I think lesson 2 is so important. The very next paragraph. It's no use making any affirmations until we have made these essential negations. Right? There's no room for a new idea until you dissolve the old. And she goes on, all science has affirmation and negation. One opens the way for the other. In the science of numbers, you subtract what is not wanted from what is wanted. In the science of geology, you say, this is not aqueous rock, this is igneous rock. Someone tells you that sin is a terrible evil that God permits, and you say, no, God is the only presence and tolerates no other nature but good. And that's what we were just talking about. You show as much wisdom by your negation as by your affirmation. And I discovered in my own healing process, and as I worked with the Course in Miracles, a huge part of it was finding that whole set of stuff and releasing it, being done with it, being able to let it go in order to step into the claim. I could not have transformed the relationship with the man I was married to at the time without dissolving all the stuff that had built up during our 20-odd years together, yeah? And then it could be what it could be. It could be healthy, whatever form it was going to be, right? But it couldn't be healthy as long as I was stuck in all that stuff, right? So now it is healthy in another form. All right. The third paragraph. No, why don't I go ahead with the second one? A young man who was seemingly very sick indeed suddenly said, "Satan, get out of the way. God Almighty, do your work." Okay, now this is the 1800s, and Satan is very real to them. But you can say the same thing about illness. You can say the same thing about the name of whatever they've handed you. You can say, you can put any word in there that stands for the thing you're ready to not have in your life right now. All right? And then God Almighty, Almighty. Okay, we've never really worked with that word. Almighty, all the power of the universe. Do your work. I've opened myself to have you be my experience, right? Someone tell the next paragraph. A strong metaphysician said he could meet any lack of supply by a strong negative statement. If he was requiring money, he never said he was supplied with all he could use. He said instead, "I do not need money." By negating the possibility of need, he made a clear way for his bounty to come to him. Okay? Need, want, desire, wish I had. All of those stuff says it's not here. All those words are reinforcing the idea that it's not present. Yes?
In Yvonne Oswald's The Power of Word,
Yes.
she points out that the subconscious does not recognize the word not.
Right. The negative.
Yeah.
So that statement ends up telling your subconscious, I need money.
Possibly. So I've been wrestling with this one for a while. And I think what we're dealing with are different definitions of subconscious.
Okay.
Okay? When Holmes uses subconscious, he's actually using, and same with Hill, Napoleon Hill, and that whole line of thinking. He's actually referring to the divine consciousness that is at the core of our being. Okay? It is something we are not conscious of. It is below, behind. Okay? When psychologists use subconscious, they're usually referring to the inner child. Okay? Yeah. I said it last time. I put something on the table. Okay, everyone, this is hot. Don't touch. Or go, really? And immediately touch it, and then we get out the ice cubes, right? And, don't touch.
Right.
Yeah.
Brain doesn't hear the negative.
She didn't hear the don't. And you don't tell a 2-year-old don't. My grandmother used to say, she taught people how to teach kindergarten. She'd say, oh, no. You never tell a child not to something. You always redirect them.
Right.
Right?
Would you repeat what you said about words like need, wish, desire, and you said?
They all reinforce the idea that it is not here. That is, they reinforce lack, separation. Okay? If I say I want something, I'm literally saying I don't have it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I shall not lack. I shall not ever want for anything, is what that is. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. And wouldn't that be interesting if that was in the commandments? We don't get to say I want. Thou shalt not want. The Lord's my shepherd, I shall not want. Yeah.
How is that different from I am seeking?
It's not. And so we're seeking our good as the entry point. Okay?
But
Everything
isn't
I've
that saying we don't have it?
Right. Everything I've done as a human being has happened because I have felt I was separated from God, and so I've been seeking it. Now I'm moving from that through these 12 lessons to being it.
I am it.
Right. So initially, she's saying we're all beings, all forms of life are seeking because they're operating in matter separated from God. So I might as well hand this out now. This is one of the tools I use to help keep those lines and levels clear. Okay? In the realm of matter, we move things around, we, change chemical substances, chemical compositions, we dissolve things, we do all kinds of things at the realm of matter, and it's still matter. All we can do, we can't undo it completely. It's in the realm of matter. Change happens with moving materials around. And that's what we have been taught everything else is. Everything is, right? But that's good. Thank you. I really think I know it. I hope I know it by now. But thank you. So what she is introducing in the first 6 lessons is, and actually in the first 20 years she was teaching, is the idea of the metaphysical, where we make the change. Whatever is actually going to be different has to be different because our thoughts and feelings are different. Okay? So the subconscious psychologically is still working at the level of matter. Okay? And as we begin to work at the level of the metaphysical, then the language is going to be a little different. And it's going to be more and more often metaphorical. More and more often it'll be the meaning behind the meaning rather than the surface definition. Okay? So, that's one of the things. Then the mystical is where she got in the last 20 years of her teaching, between 1906 and 1925. And that's where she actually called this work high mysticism. And that's where the book comes from. Because we are being, right? We are experiencing the oneness, and so everything becomes that. What I did in putting this together is I merged the 3 levels, if you will, of her books, and they started with the matter moving into the metaphysical, and then they move on from the metaphysical into the mystical. I didn't understand that she had 2 or 3 levels where she was working when I first did that. It still works, but it brings up questions like, can I use that language, right? So, and then the thing that she is moving us toward is recognizing God's perfection is unchanging, right? The absolute, whatever we call it, the infinite all that is, never changes. There is no change in it. And so there is a line of thinking that says the absolute all that is entertains itself by having these dreams that are called our experiences. It's unchanged, just as we are unchanged by dreams, more often than not. The absolute is unchanged by the dreams of our experiences.
A request.
Yes.
Since you're going to be putting this audio out on your website, can a PDF of this be out there with it?
It already is,
Oh,
but I'll
good.
put it out there again. It's on, if you open up my website, there's a slideshow, and one of the slides is this,
Oh.
but I can put it on my sharings page also. Yeah, very cool. All right, so does that help clarify that?
Yeah.
Okay, when we're operating at one level, the body-mind is operating like a 2-year-old child. You tell the body-mind, don't do this, it's going to do it. Okay? The subconscious, which is actually the divine consciousness in us at the core that we are not usually aware of, the Christ mind, doesn't, it actually does negate. It says, that isn't here, this is. That can't be, this is. That kind of thing. Is that helpful? Oh, good. All right, so the last paragraph, when the right negations are stated, I'm on 41 still. Our affirmations are exceedingly effective. A powerful steam engine will not move a wheel until a valve is opened for a vent for the steam. So the day set aside for denials and negations gives the mind a clear draft for the finest affirmations to blaze in our daily life. Right. All right. So that's the transition from lesson 2 to 3, and now we get into the concept of affirming, the power of affirming on the next page. Okay.
Just a moment though.
Yes.
I mean, what would be an example of a wise negation?
Does anyone have one?
Of a what?
A wise negation.
That's what lesson 2 is about.
Okay.
Right, there were 5 standard negations.
Okay, I
Good
better
for
read
you.
that. Yeah, okay.
That's what lesson 2 was all about.
Okay.
And, it was, there is no death.
Okay.
Death can't be real, this is why. Okay?
Okay.
There is no separation from the divine. That can't be real, this is why.
Okay.
Good.
All
Good
right.
for you. Glad you went there. All right, power of affirming. So, part of what she's doing, if you look back at the title to lesson 3 is called Forgiveness, Affirmations of Our Good. All right? And it's a very powerful thing. It was part of when I was doing my healing work for me, realizing a huge amount of what was causing illness in the body was stuff that I was carrying from the past that I didn't know how to be done with. Right? And we don't teach, really, forgiveness in this culture very well.
Not very well. No.
Yeah, oh, I forgive you, and I don't mean a word of
Not.
it. Right? So, I had to learn to dissolve my energy around the experience and have it become nothing in me as forgiveness. When I could do that, then I could sit with the person and not have any of that energy, right? And if I sat with them in my imagination and I went, I had all this stuff about you and I don't anymore, but I need you to forgive me for carrying all this stuff about you. Because, if I don't feel forgiven, the forgiveness isn't real. Right? We both need to feel forgiven. And in that moment, I get the awareness and that feeling, and that was so huge the first time of, oh, there has never been any being out there judging me for any of this. Forgiveness is, right? That's huge. And if you need more detail on that, there's the thing right above the Emma picture on my website, and there's stuff in some of my books. But what is going to be happening now is the first sentence, the one in Power of Affirming, the one served by our inward beholding gives its own nature in return for ours. Okay? Whatever we give up gets filled up with divine nature. Whatever we let go of. And remember at the end of lesson 2, the only sacrifice, the only giving up are thoughts that no longer serve us. That's all we're ever giving up. Our thoughts, ideas, memories, beliefs that no longer serve us. That's all we ever have to give up. And as we give those up, we get more of the divine nature. More peace, more beauty, more balance, more well-being, more love, whatever the words are. Right? So, today there are people who, by contemplating the healing God rather than their own pains, have received vigorous, healthy bodies. Right? So by focusing on the healing presence of divinity, how in divinity everything is whole and well, and how whenever anything appears to be not like that, the divine presence transforms that, whether that's in the Hindu tradition, the Muslim tradition, the Christian tradition, the Judeo tradition, it doesn't matter. Think of Elisha, think of Elijah, think of, all these beings who in that mind are able to say, no, that's not real. Health is what's real here. Right? That's what she's saying. You focus on them. Their success denotes harmony, forgiveness. They are preaching forgiveness with their bodies. Now she says forgiveness is better understood as giving forness. And we're going to talk about that as we go forward. He's giving for our upset. God's good. We're being given for our whatever, the good. Okay? If we go on to the 4th paragraph on that page, the experience of prosperity is simply the acknowledgement, felt, either consciously or unconsciously, of the presence of God, of good. If I know I'm in the presence of my good, then I am prosperous. If I feel it. And, Larry pointed out early on that knowing and feeling are one and the same. Yeah. Those who are prosperous, 3rd line there, have eliminated from their mind some idea that the one who is seemingly not prosperous still holds tightly onto. If you appear to be lacking, remember there's a self-supporting power in the Holy Spirit, which when you let it operate unhindered through you, leads straight to your substantial support. Okay, people think you're fortunate, but it's simply because you've thought a high plane of provision. Okay, so if we have been taught money is evil, we've been taught wrong. Okay, the root of all evil is the love of money. It's got nothing to do with money. It's the love, it's attachment to having stuff.
Obsession.
Yeah, craving, right?
Yeah.
The money itself is good stuff, it's energy, okay? We have been taught that nice people, rich people can't be nice and nice people can't be rich, or we've been taught that to be spiritual is to be poor. Yeah. Many of us have lived with those things and have to undo those thoughts, which are not true. Jesus was never poor. This man wore one of the most expensive garments ever made. That's why they were throwing dice over it under the cross. They were trying to, gambling to see who could get this really wonderful garment. He had a place to stay wherever he chose. He had people providing for him whenever he chose. There was a bag of silver, that was being used to supply them. Now, granted, it was a giving and a taking with people all the time, and it was a donation and all of that, but that didn't mean he lacked, right? The Buddhist guys would go off with their bowl, as he taught his disciples, by the way, to do. Go off with your bowl and your sandals and nothing else. And, they have plenty. St. Francis and his fellows used to go through the streets singing of their plenty with their bowl, just like the Buddhists. It's very interesting. When we know we have enough, we have enough. And they chose a lifestyle in which one meal a day was more than enough. Do you know how many YouTubes there are out there right now persuading people to get down to one meal a day?
Yeah.
Really?
Intermittent fasting,
That's
the
right.
healthiest thing you can do for your body.
Is that true?
I do it.
Yes.
I understand.
Well, that is the big, study
No, I'm
right
not trying
now.
to be funny. Is that true?
Yes, that's the
Yes.
biggest study, right? Those are the studies that are really out there right now.
Right, that our notion of 3 meals or 5 meals a day is fine for some parts of one's life, and there are times when you want to be fasting for longer periods, up to 20 hours or 24 hours between meals. And then that kicks in parts of the body that are healing and regenerating. And then you can go back to the other way of eating, but then you need to intermittently fast.
And part of it, they're saying, is because the energy that your body requires to go through the entire digestive process takes away the energy to heal.
That's one of the ways they're explaining it. So it's fascinating, when that was what the Buddhist monks and the early Christian monks did automatically, intermittent fasting.
The Mormons, I remember working with a guy who was a Mormon, and they fasted for 24 hours once a week.
Right, and it used to be that, fish on Friday was originally fast on Friday.
Oh.
Was he healthy? Was he
Well, it
healthy?
used to be too, that there was no such thing as lunch. Lunch was not a thing. Lunch started happening when people had jobs outside of the home. They would rise and they would break their fast around 10:30 or 11, and then they would eat in the evening. But when they started working for someone else, that person said, no, you can't have 2 meals a day on my watch. You only get 1.
Right.
So they added a meal, lunch.
Right. That it is related to the factory working system, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of things that, again, we bring a perspective and a set of mindset to, and then we just build on that. So the things that were being taught in the 50s were developed in the 1910s and the 1890s, and they were taught as this is how everyone has to do it, right? But if you look at indigenous peoples anywhere, they're not getting up having breakfast and then doing a few things and then having lunch and then doing a few things and having dinner. No, that's not how it works. They might have 1 meal in a day. They might have 2 meals in a day. They might just break the fast on water or rock soup or something like that, which by the way is a real thing. It's mineral water. water. You boil rocks in water to get a mineral water.
Oh.
And it's rock soup.
Who knew it was that easy?
Stone soup.
Stone soup. Stone
Don't
soup.
buy it.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be the next thing. We got bone broth, now we'll have stone soup. Right. So, anyway, prosperity comes from the inside. It's not about the appearances. If you're feeling prosperous, everything that is yours, and is needed for you to be fulfilled is at hand. So the next paragraph, you may take any position you like and hold on to it until it makes your life demonstrate it. You may take any position you like. Hold on to it until it makes your life demonstrate it. Isn't that marvelous? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Declare yourself free of the shadow of belief in absence of good. It will vanish. Right? This is the essence of the science of getting rich. This is the master key. This is the whole other arm of New Thought that was not in churches. It was in the business place. Napoleon Hill. All those guys are based on the same principles applied in that sphere. So it began to be seen as the masculine arm in the world and the feminine arm in the healing and church situation. And that's been very effective. So in my book, Science of Mental Healing, I talk about that link. All right. Then 43, successful men and women of all times have kept in mind their own strong affirmations. Sometimes they took them on as children, okay? So if you think of a Kennedy, or you think of a Trump, or you think of, even an Obama, they are people who grew up with the understanding that this is who I am and these are the things that I can do. And yes, my parents were doing these things, but that was so I could do these things, right? And it's not often stated, but the place that Michelle grew up is about 3 blocks from where I was living when I was a child. And that's right on the edge of the University of Chicago campus. And the hospital that she was the development director for was the hospital I went to when I was a kid, And so she was in that environment, even though her parents were, quote, blue and pink collar. She was surrounded by the assumption that, of course, you can go to university. See, it's right there, right? Yeah. So when we have those assumptions built in, of course you're going to have money. Of course you're going to have plenty. Then you're going to have it. And if you're brought up with the assumption that it's going to be very hard to have anything, and, well, that's what your experience is going to be. And when you're brought up, so there are all kinds of, things that we have been affirming, and we get very successful at whatever we've been affirming. All right. There's some of her examples that, she says, liars are prosperous if they eliminate belief in absence. The next paragraph, if you discover yourself leaning upon someone else for companionship, strength, or sympathy, remember Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Self-reliance. He prophesied that in the future people would be taught to be self-companioning and self-strengthening. This awareness comes from the affirmations of metaphysical science. As part of the one mind, our true nature is, by definition, self-companioning. How could it not? Right? Yes. If people cling to you, it's because they haven't learned to appreciate themselves. Right? When they realize that their own wisdom, intelligence, and power is God, they won't depend on you for anything. Next paragraph, if you are one who believes that you are absent from your beloved friends, you will feel great satisfaction in the awareness that love is never absent because it's omnipresent. Huge, huge. It doesn't matter what form, what location, they are always present. The love that they are is always present. Next paragraph, if you don't work with your mind as quickly as others, don't be dismayed. There's always one thing in which each person is quicker than others, and it's a great practice to offer glad praises that the Holy Spirit moves through you and in you so successfully. Rise and proclaim your freedom from your claims of incompetence and ignorance.
I like that.
Isn't that marvelous? Proclaim your freedom from the I can'ts and I don't knows.
No more absent-mindedness.
Right on. Because mind is ever present.
That's right. God is my mind.
Right on. Right on. I remember I used to work with a minister who said, well, if the word doesn't come to me right away, I send a little elf back into the files to bring it forward. All right, so you're beginning to get a sense of how the affirmation and the negation affirmation comes forth. If you find that you have been saying something that doesn't serve you, you can negate that and replace it with ideas that do serve you. And the ideas that are God ideas, that are divine ideas, that are the infinite all that is, the abstractions out of which all form emerges, then lift us out of the stuff.
I just realized that we all have an elf
In our minds.
in myself.
Ooh, elf.
Very good.
My elf,
Mm-hmm.
My elf.
Mm-hmm.
not myself.
Right, exactly. I like that. So I can see a Facebook posting kind of emerging. Someone will create it, I'm sure. All right. So the last how do I want to deal with this? Okay, the next paragraph on 44. The power of your soul, the all-powerful Christ within, shows itself at the least little exhibit of determination not to believe in the reality or power of evil. The least little, okay, opens the way for the truth, the reality to flow in. It's like removing the finger from the dike. That one little tiny thought, bingo. It all can be flooding in. In every aspect of life, you'll find that the resolve to choose only the good. That's all you need to do, is set the intention. And set the intention to choose to experience only the good. Will create wonders for you. Health will come plainly into sight. Prosperity is certain to come to you. Happy life in all its dimensions is yours. Will there be no more challenges? Of course there will be challenges. You thrive on challenges. But they don't have to be upsetting. They don't have to be distressing. They're eustress. They're good stress. Right? All right. You'll first notice freedom from sickness. Then you'll see how much better you get along with people who seemed before to be so difficult. You'll notice your own disposition is better, and you'll soon be more prosperous. Many things will change in your favor that seemed to hurt you before. And you don't have to tell a soul. You just be it. And the things begin to shift. Okay. So in lesson 2, there were 5 things to negate that almost everybody in our culture needs to get rid of those beliefs. Okay, they are so impenetrating. They are penetrating. They are penetrating our culture in so many dimensions. We need to, consciously say, no, that's not true. I refuse to accept that idea, right? There is no basis for that in reality. In reality, all is good, or whatever, all right? That's what we do when we do lesson 2. As we come into lesson 3, we find there are complementary affirmations. It's not that, it's this. It's not that, it's this. So that's what we're going to be looking at, general affirmations, okay? And I will touch on that at the top of 45. The Most High Good is life and truth as well as love. There's a wonderful uplifting energy in the words, Most High Good. For some people, however, it separates us too much. That's way out there. I'm just little old me. Most High Good is something out there that maybe I'll attain. So if it's not what she says it is for you in our culture at this time, don't use it. Use some other phrase that is, like for me, ever-present good, or every when and everywhere, good every when and everywhere, whatever. Whatever works for you, all right? The mind is filled to ever higher feelings of truth and love. The Most High Good is higher than any we have yet realized. Yet, therefore, out of the reach of our words, we have the love, the life that keeps all things seeking it, but never finding it, until the mind observes its own great plane of reality and negates it with the omnipotent no. Okay? No, this is not real. Okay? Yes, it's useful. Thank you very much. All right? On her way to an Emma class, one of my students was hurrying back from Shasta. She went to Shasta twice a year. She was hurrying back from Shasta, and she was headed up the road, and you've got a similar story. And she was at the south end of Newport, in that area where there's the car company and the warehouses and all of that, and an intersection ahead and whatever, and someone pulled out of a driveway virtually into her car. And all the witnesses said there should have been a total destruction. But she was getting to class on time. No, I'm getting to class on time. And they pulled over and saw there was no damage to either vehicle and went on their way.
Whoa.
Okay? That's the omnipotent no.
Wow.
Okay? It creates a space for something. She couldn't just say the no. She had to have the next piece in there. I'm getting to class on time. Okay? So the no is very effective, but most effective when it has the affirmation attached to it. But that's the omnipotent no that we're talking about. Okay? Once we see that this is not reality, whatever it is we're looking at, cannot be the case. It is not real. It's not happening. I am back on 45. No. All right. To know this is to know God, and we are exactly like that which we know. Know, feel, understand. That which we've experienced fully in ourselves. So to know God is to be God. All right. There's all kinds of things about, all kinds of things about knowledge and wisdom. And you can say about the paragraph up one from the bottom. By saying that God is intelligence, God within you begins to show itself through you as great wisdom. You may be very wise in healing the sick or in speaking in public. You may suddenly be able to speak in many languages, as the apostles did. Okay? So knowing the truth that the infinite all that is, the source of all that is, that which is constantly creating is intelligence, then all the other things around that come into place. And all the things we assign as intelligence come into place. The great words omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience will enlarge your sphere of action by lifting your mind away from your normal thoughts and senses toward the heights and depths of God, the eternal, changeless principle. Okay? And it really does work when I start, going omnipresence, omnipotence, or if I say one power, one presence. It really does help bring us into that. So at the top of 46, so the first affirmation, the first of the 5 general ones, is my good is my God. My God is life, truth, love, substance, intelligence, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. Basically, the first affirmation is lesson 1. Okay? It's the summary of lesson 1. It is acknowledging the fundamental, fundamental state of who we are. These words have the power, she says, to put us on the right track in our thinking, everything about us. And then she says in the next paragraph, this is very important, but don't get entangled in your own words. You are greater than any words you ever used. You are the mind that uses such great words to express your ideas. Okay? Your ideas have no words. They are formless. We use words as a close approximation. And if we are using words effectively, then the words we are saying are a way for us to be sharing the formless idea. they are kind of the wavelength, like a radio wave, and the idea can move with it. If I'm doing my job correctly, you're getting directly the idea, the words are just happening. The means by which the switch is turned on, if you will. Does that make it? It's like turning on the radio. Okay, thank you for understanding that. At present, next paragraph, you use words to approach your own good. There will come a time when you will not use words. No words can truly express your understanding of God. You are it. And what understanding of God you really feel is the substance that you show. Okay? So the only words you can speak and be identified with as yet are, I am my own understanding of God. I am that I am. And the I am that I am is what I understand God to be, what I understand Jehovah to be, or what I understand Allah to be, or what I understand the goddess to be. That's what I am. All right? And so in the next affirmation, the second one is, I live and move and have my being in God. And then the next one, I am spirit, mind, identical with God, wisdom, strength, wholeness, whatever you want to call the divine beingness. So, I live and move and have my being in the all that is, the powerful, the creative power of beauty and wholeness and wellness, and I am spirit. I am mind, and that's what that creative power is. Spirit and mind. I am one with, I am identical with. At this point, identical with. This is our understanding. If we've called the one being throughout all that is spirit, then we're also spirit. If we've called it mind, if we've called it one present, whatever we've called it, we are that. So the next paragraph, the last paragraph on that page, all who let the spirit be themselves, as it is God, will sweep the globe with inspiration, for in them is come the great spirit, which sounds as a mighty wind. So the great spirit of the indigenous peoples of North America, is who we are identifying with. We're seeing that moving in and as and through us. And there's a wonderful, wonderful map of consciousness put out by, just lost his last name, David. Power versus Force, the Eye of the Eye, Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, there they all are, all the pieces. I'm looking at the books. So in his map, he has laid out that at the lower levels are apathy and despair, and then, and that's the lower chakra levels. And then the next ones are, might be hatred and anger, and then the next ones, so that's the orange, that's the generative chakras. And then as you move into yellow, it's honor and other kinds of, pride. So now we're at the solar plexus. And each of these are states of consciousness, and each of them affect people around us. And when we're in apathy and despair, we're affecting ourselves and maybe one or two others, because everyone's pretty much staying away from us. We've created this shell, right? And as we move up through these levels of consciousness with these emotions attached to them, and with a different notion of who God is in each one of those. So when we get into the yellow, the empowerment place, we start seeing God as permissive and allowing and, standing back out of the way, letting us be and do who we are. And then we move into the heart chakra, and it starts to be loving and caring. Well, by then, we're actually affecting thousands of people. And when we get up into the third eye and then into the upper levels, he's saying one person can affect the thoughts of 500 million people.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah. So the more fully we embody what Larry called the Christ mind, the more fully we embody the true essential nature of beingness, the more fully we are focused on and feeling the oneness with the all that is, the more of the world is affected by every thought and word we have. And this is what Gandhi was able to do between the period about 1925 and about 1945. Amazing stuff. All right. So, if we go to the fourth affirmation, I'm going to give you just a little bit. The last lines of the paragraph above the fourth affirmation. And so your mind, holding firmly onto truth through its intentions, negations, and affirmations, is certain to cure any who come to you, even though you don't lift a finger. Okay? So, just what I was saying, when we get to a place, we are affecting everyone around us. In the middle of that paragraph, she says, there will be, all who let the mind be themselves, as it is God, will speak and think thoughts of God, right? Thoughts will flow free and strong. Their thoughts will shed abroad healing. Their thoughts will reflect the divine thinker. The world, which has been covered in itself in pain and poverty by wrong thought, will uncover from its shadows of grief and sin. So as we get into a higher and higher state of consciousness, the whole world can be transformed. There's a wonderful book called My 12 Years with Mary Baker Eddy, and it's by a man who was her secretary for a while. And he was also a practitioner, and there was a woman coming to him to do a treatment. And while she was coming to the door, he could see her on the sidewalk just getting to the door. Mary Baker Eddy's carriage, an open carriage in the springtime, went by. The woman looked at Mary Baker Eddy. Mary Baker Eddy wasn't looking at her, but she came in and she said, "I don't need her treatment anymore." Her thoughts shed abroad a healing power. That's the level of consciousness Mary Baker Eddy was being in that moment. Okay? Yes?
Well, and sometimes when you're around, like Kala Rinpoche or some of those Buddhist teachers, it's like, whoo.
Yeah, you can feel that.
They smile at you and you're like, whoa.
Right. Yeah. And the more time they spend in that state, then yes. Yeah, they call that Rigpa, pure awareness, when they're in that space. Yeah. So the fourth affirmation is, God works through me. Okay? The infinite, all that is working through me. I don't have to do it. To will and do whatever is my fulfillment to be and do. So, not what someone out there told me I have to be. Not what, like Neil Donald Walsh says in The Secret, there isn't a blackboard up there that says, he says, Neil Donald Walsh, a charming man, should be doing such and so, right? There is no blackboard in the heavens. Right? Yeah, so, but there is that which feels like my fulfillment, okay? This that we're doing now is fulfilling to me. And so all the resources are given to me for us to have this experience. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you get it. All right. So, God, whatever I call it, the mind, the spirit works through me all the time. The omnipresent creative process works through me all the time for my fulfillment. God's will for me is my perfect happiness. Lesson 101 in the Course in Miracles. And we live on Highway 101, so you never have to read it.
That's why we're all so happy.
There you go. Our understanding, the next sentence after that, does all that is done for us. Our understanding does all that is done. Okay, so if I understand the world to work a certain way, then that's what is done. They got it. I love it. You got it. If I understand the world to work a different way, then that's what is done. If I understand the nature of divine to be one thing, if I understand jealousy and possessiveness and angry, I'm going to get a whole different world from if I understand loving and supportive or absent. Okay? Most of the founding fathers were deists. Yeah, there's a God, but he's not doing much. That empowers us. We are the ones with the power. Yeah. All right. Thank you so very much. We are clothed, in the italics at the bottom, we are clothed and fed and housed and healed. We have all our blessings by our understanding.
That's the one that I was thinking of.
Good. Very good. We're free to make our understanding show forth, great or small, free to make our world. Okay? If we understand a political system that works in a certain way, what are we going to get?
A system that works in a certain way.
That's right. And so if you want a different world, what do you get to do?
Believe in
Change your
it.
thought.
Change your understanding. I found myself writing when I was doing the lessons, my good is a government that works as a council of elders, speaking wisdom and listening from the heart.
That's great.
Wow.
I'd like that on a bumper sticker, please. That's one I would put on my vehicle.
That's what came up this last week. It's like, yes.
Because, look how we're talking about it all the time in these other terms. It's broken, it's this, it's
Right.
that, instead
Or
of,
affirming all that.
yeah.
All right, so at the bottom of that page, because we understand God, we love God and allow ourselves to be governed by the good that God is, and so, as we do so, we see that there can be no sin, sickness, or death in the good that we are, right? In God the good, there can't be anything that is against Him, which is all sin is, without Him. There can't be any sickness, there can't be any brokenness, there can't be any death, because there can't be any ending in what God is. Therefore, we can affirm, I am governed by God the good, and so cannot sin. Nor can I fear sin, sickness, or death. I can't fear it when I'm in that understanding. Does that make sense? Yeah. When I'm in that Shem. That's what Jesus said. In my name, He says Shem, in my Shem, in my being, in my nature, in my understanding, in my mind. You declare these things and they will be so.
So that's the fifth one.
Yep. Yes.
So, I have no words, no. Okay, so, it's hard. Okay, so things, I look at things that I have perceived and labeled in a certain way, and today, as I'm doing the lessons, I see the good, and I see spirit in all of these things. And so even in things that I have done, I do say,
Okay,
Is
so
that okay?
I, as spirit,
Yeah.
have never done any of the things that I
Right on.
seem to remember my human self doing. Okay, so this is the appearances and reality thing. The spirit of me, the essential core of me, never did any of that.
Just the human part of
Because
me?
we're
Yes.
we're down here dreaming.
Right,
We're
it was a
dreaming.
dream. In my dream, in the dream of my youth,
Yeah.
in the dream of my anger, in the dream of my self-destructiveness, in the dream of my self-sabotaging. I may have done any number of things, but that's all in the dream. My essence has never done any of those things.
And you haven't changed yourself, and you didn't change any of the people that you might have interacted with, or all the stuff that you threw and, destroyed. None of that. None of that has any meaning, none of it has any, what is it in the Course? It's effect,
Right,
because it wasn't a cause.
right,
Because it wasn't a cause, because God didn't create it.
that's right.
So,
Very good.
home free.
Right, literally home free,
Right.
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Now, one of the points in A Course in Miracles is the last judgment is the last time any human being judges.
Wow. Wow.
I gotta go. I judge that I have to go.
It's 4:30. You're very good. We made it through the 5 general affirmations. You get to discover what your 2 are. They may be in direct response to the 2 negations that are your individual ones, or they may be slightly different.
Ah,
Okay?
okay.
So, take a look at what you personally need to affirm to be more fulfilled in your experience of who you are, who you really are. You might want to grab some grapes or cherries out of the back room.
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, dear. I'm so glad you
Thank
came.
you all.
Good to see you, Linda.
So, as we go through this personal affirmations, okay, the third paragraph, you alone can find and use them, however, for as your mother cannot do your eating and breathing for you, no one else can empower you with the strength of your own affirmations.
Oh, but Lord, she tried.
That's a great story, but I don't think you need to live from it anymore. All right. So there is a wonderful thing at the top of the next page. It's in the italics. Between you and your true possessions lies only your claim of their absence. And your true possessions are love in all its forms, motherly, brotherly, loverly, whatever other form you can think of. Your true possessions are health and well-being. Your true possessions are satisfaction and fulfillment. Your true possessions are freedom. Freedom from anxiety and despair. Freedom from obligation. Freedom from anything that has held you in bondage. Okay, these are your true possessions. And the only thing that's kept you from experiencing them is your claim of their absence. And again, the Course in Miracles says, lost love, lost power, lost anything is simply because you've held it away from yourself. Yes.
Wow. I think I understand something that I wondered about for almost 50 years. When I was in the military, I was a paramedic, and we met this priest they called the fighting man's priest. The guy was really unusual. He looked like a Marine, but he moved about the battlefield with no fear. Everybody said, look at that, oh, Jesus, wait. And he never got shot. The Marines would cover for him, and he would minister to the wounded and dying. One day I had a chance to meet him, and being a little snarky, I said, Father, how is it that you can move through the battlefield and have no fear? And he just smiled at me. He said, oh, Doc, that's easy. And I'm looking, he says, I walk with God. And
Wow.
it stunned me, but I didn't quite understand until just recently.
Woohoo!
I can imagine what he was saying to himself.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
He was doing God's work, huh?
He was being God's presence on the battlefield. And in all likelihood, the enemy didn't even see him.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
In all likelihood, the enemy did not even see him.
He was walking spirit, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah, yeah. There are people who have walked down the street knowing they were walking with God, and other people have said, yeah, you had a person on either side of you, and they didn't. They were alone. Okay? But other people saw 3 people, so they were safe in that neighborhood. Yeah, same kind of a thing. I have a friend who is intentionally a light worker and goes where Spirit calls her. And she was walking the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and only 3 people saw her. And she said only the light workers.
Oh.
None of the druggies, the beggars, any of that. None of them saw her. And I've had 1 or 2 cases in the Tenderloin like that too. I left the train station at 10 p.m. going up Market Street, and I just said, okay, I'm here to be a blessing. And I was totally, people should have seen me and did not. Yeah, I was just fine. It was, yes. So
Because you're
yes.
at a different vibrational level then.
Exactly, exactly.
And I
Not
have-
in their world.
And I have heard that you have to, though, sometimes I've heard that you need to pay attention in your car and put out the affirmation that people can see me. Because well, truly, people have said that if you are operating at that level, people do not see your car, and then they can, and
That's beautiful. I've never heard that one.
I can't remember whether it was Abraham, but somebody said it is sometimes helpful to say people can see me.
That's wonderful. So know what you need to know in a given. So that realization that if I am feeling as if it isn't here, it's because I have claimed that it isn't here. In some place, I have a belief that it isn't here.
So if I'm not here, then I disappear.
Yeah. And that means you're done. Unless you actually do read the lives and teachings of Masters in the Far East, and you figure out that you can come and go.
And be in many places at once.
Right. All right. Any questions on what we've read so far in Lesson 3? Any more questions, other issues, other insights, other possibilities?
Yippee.
All right. Then let's go to the practice. So this is Wednesday morning's practice, and as I said, during this week, we're going, tomorrow morning you'll do 1, and then the next day you'll do 2, and the next day you'll do 3, and then the next day you'll do 1, except Sunday you take off, and Monday you'll do 1, 2, and 3. And then if you get a chance to do 1 again on Thursday, that'd be lovely. So on this third morning of the week, we study, reason out, and state the 5 general affirmations. In Lesson 2, we studied, reasoned out, and stated the 5 general negations. The idea is to have us understand, have us comprehend, have us be able to say to the ego mind, whenever it comes up and it says, or the monkey mind, or the chatter mind, or whoever you want to call it, whenever it comes up and says, but that's what's real. No, that's just the facts. Yeah, that's just an appearance. And you'll be able to have some reasoning for that, okay? So, shall we read all 5 of them together?
Yes.
My good is my God. And my God is life, truth, love, substance, intelligence, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. I live and move and have my being in good. God or good, either way, right? I am spirit, mind, identical with God, wisdom, strength, and wholeness. God, good, works through me to will and to do whatever is mine to be and do. So there it's written as mine, or you can have it as my fulfillment, or you can have it as my satisfaction, or my delight, or anything else in there, okay? So part of what, you may recall the 3 E's, right?
Effortless.
Right. It's mine to do if it is effortless, it is enjoyable, and it is energizing. If it is not all 3 of those, it is not mine to do right now. It may be in 5 minutes or 5 years, but it isn't right now.
Effortless, enjoyable.
Energizing.
Energizing.
When I do it, I feel better. Yes. And we all will tend to forget one of them. And that's fine. That just says where we are in consciousness
It's like
right
we
now.
all forget that 1-7 dwarf.
I love it. So it's mine to do if it is all 3 of those things, if it is satisfying and fulfillment, if it moves me towards my satisfaction and fulfillment, and it is all those 3 things. That's a very good sign, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah? All right. And so the 5th affirmation, I am governed by God, the good, and so cannot sin, nor can I fear sin, sickness, or death, or anything else. I can't be afraid of any social movement, political movement, institution. I can't be afraid because I am governed by God. Now I want to play with the word govern. I come from a background in cybernetics, and cybernetics is the science of the governor. In fact, in Latin, the Latin word governor is in Greek cybernetic, actually, kybernetor. Okay, so kybernetor, governor are the same words. And what it is there is something that is comparing the output to the input. So you have a standard. I am governed by God. My standard is God. My comparison of everything that goes on is God. And so when I do my product, whatever that is, my process to accomplish anything, then that has been governed by, right, that has been guided by that divinity, that divine wisdom, wholeness, and well-being. And the output from that, I get information back to my understanding of the divine again. So that's what a governor is. Okay, speed control. My cruise control is God. Is another way to think about it. In my life, my cruise control, when I say I'm governed by God. In my life, my thermostat, that's another form of governor. On a steam engine, there's a governor. Any of these things that are managing the process by what is actually happening. So I am governed by in that way. Is that a useful expansion of that? It's not that there's someone ruling over me. It's that the governor in my system is divinity.
And in many instances, that governor governs the power.
Absolutely. Huge. That's a huge part
Because
of it.
there's a governor on all these different engines and everything.
Right.
And it's governing the amount of power in any given moment that's needed to complete the task or
Right.
get where it's going.
Right. The only limit on my power is God. That's another way to say that. All right. And then you will develop your 2 personal affirmations, probably in direct response to the 2 personal negations, but possibly you will find an affirmation that either encloses both of them or moves you beyond them or something like that. And that's fine. And unlike Emma's time, we live a far more complex life. So you may find that over a period of years, 1 to 5 years, you change those negations and affirmations. In her experience, they were forever. You had made this 1 or 2 shifts off the mark when you were very little, and now you need to deal with them. But in our world, we have so many opportunities that we might want to change them over time. Just check to see, is this thing that I am saying isn't true about me in the negation still something I need to be focusing on? And this is the second time an image has come to mind, so I'm going to share it. There was a wonderful little book. It was called Sidetracked Home Executives. Came out in the 70s. I doubt that it's still in print, but Amazon may have it on the back burner somewhere. It was a little paperback book. A couple of women who turned out they were in Vancouver, Washington, were just going crazy. They were sisters, and their kids were about the same age, and they weren't getting anything done, and their houses were a mess, and their husbands weren't happy, and they weren't happy, and they were just, And so they set up a plan. They met in McDonald's. The kids could play in the play space in the rain. And they started putting together a list of all the tasks they had to do. Okay, and they put it on different colored cards. And I used this system when I was raising my kids. So daily tasks are 1 card, weekly tasks are another color, monthly tasks are another color, quarterly tasks are another color, annual tasks are another. And I guess the animal task would be another one. And in any case, so then they put them in this box that was by date, right? 1 through 31, and by month. So if it was January and March, then after I'd done it in January, I'd stick it in March, right? And whatever was in that month, then I would sort through 1 through 31, the daily, the weekly, etc. And they started selling this system. It's a great system, I got to tell you, because what I would do is I'd get, especially summers when the kids were home, I'd get up in the morning and I'd put out the day's stuff, all the different colors, daily, and whoever wanted to do whatever they wanted to do got to do it, as long as they were all done by the end of the day, and I only had to do 2. Right? And it was amazing because they started learning, and it had the instructions how to do it, and it said if you can't follow the instructions. So anyway, very cool system. And just for fun, they had one of their mother, they were sisters, they had their mother test it. And she made up all the cards. And the thing is, when you get to the point where it's a habit, you don't have to lay out the cards anymore, right? Because it's just built into your process. And so they went to visit their mom after a couple of months, and they said, how's it going using the system? And she says, yeah, I've got the card here that I don't remember. The 1 card out of the whole system. It was all habitual for her.
Wow.
And that's such a good way to understand this stuff, right? We have to do it not by rote, but consciously, intentionally, until it's so much a part of us that we only need 1, 1 or 2 to remind us. So there we go. All right.
I like having the lessons
on a note card in my pocket.
And that does help. It does indeed. Okay, let's look at the next part of that lesson 3, the practice, on page 50. And here is what she is suggesting that we use as the giving forness, okay? That to get to that place where what has been no longer has to be, and the divine can fill it. So are you up for reading this together? Mm-hmm. All right. Here is my mind. I release old beliefs. Give to me for its seeming foolishness and ignorance, right wisdom. Here is my life. I release old patterns. Give for its apparent contrariness, true and everlasting life. Here is my heart. It lives in the One. Forgive its seeming restlessness and dissatisfaction, its apparent resentments and discouragement. Forgive its false attractions and hates, hopes, and fears. Give eternal love for all these. Here is my body. I release old images. Give for any imperfection I have believed, your sweet perfection. Forgive me altogether. Give in return for my old sense of self, my God self, so I may be life and inspiration for all. All right. This is a very powerful, powerful statement, and it's very easily lost. I know a lot of people who go through lesson 3 and forget to do this part. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
But previous to this, going through it this time, I used to, like, when I would read these, I would cringe because I would be going, even though the word apparent is there, it's like, oh, I didn't want to, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
State these things.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying?
I got it.
Yeah.
So it's the whole negating and affirming thing.
Right.
Yeah. At some point, we don't need to negate anymore.
Okay, got it. Because I was sort of like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That makes
you're
sense.
opening the way for the deeper
Got it.
possibility. You're saying, I'm giving, releasing, letting go of anything that is not divine,
Got it.
so that the divine self of me can be my complete experience.
Yeah.
Okay? And everything else is just an experience. It's just an appearance. It's just a memory. It's just a story. Yeah? And, of course, as always, make the words your own. Modify it as you need to. You know, if you don't want the word God or you want something else, and that's always at the end of every practice like this. These words are suggestions. Then she says, then hold the image of the highest aspirations you can envision. If it's hard for you to focus on an image, write down just what you would like your life to do and be, and read it aloud at intervals. In time, you will accomplish exactly what you wish. So every Wednesday is your opportunity to say, wow, if the world were heaven on earth, this is how my life would be. Right? Every Wednesday morning, you get to say that. And it's going to change over time. There'll be elements that are the same, but it will shift and change as you shift and change. But as heaven on earth, this is whatever it is in relationships and physical well-being, financial well-being, and the nature of the work that you do, because we all love to work when it's our heart work. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yes. So hold that and write it as you can. And then she has a nightly practice. Every night before going to sleep, give glad, joyous praises to the Most High, acknowledging that the Holy Spirit fills your thoughts with ardor and fires your affairs to splendid achievements. So experiencing that deep gratitude and appreciation and realization that as the Spirit is moving in, as and through us, incredible things get to happen. And isn't it marvelous, right? And everyone around us comes into alignment with the good because we simply are choosing it for no other reason. Isn't that amazing? It's just mind-boggling. All right. So that's Wednesday morning's practice and Wednesday daily every night if you choose to. Shall we go on to the metaphors? So this is lesson 3, and the qualities of 3 apply to the lessons, and she's talking about Pythagoras, called 3 the number of divine law. The Jewish people have always regarded 3 as specially complete and mystic. 3 is the number of balance and completion. Where 1 is isolated and 2 are in dynamic balance, 3 is stable and reliable, the 3-legged stool, right? So 3 has these qualities about it, and the lesson therefore does. And then she goes on to the book of Revelation. With the sounding of the 3rd angel in the book of Revelation, the star is called wormwood, the divine tonic, or mind-preserving principle, wraps the conscious mind in sane security, in healthy sanity, security. So Alzheimer's disappears. And I'm fascinated to see that senior dementia and Alzheimer's are beginning to be understood, and that lifestyle changes are being encouraged and genetic observations are being made. We will get past this very soon. We're almost to the point where it is not necessary for an elder in our culture to lose it. Not that they ever do in any other culture.
The lifestyle changes that they're talking about.
They have to do with exercise and food. Funny thing about that. All right. And then she goes on to say, Ezekiel spoke of the 3rd face of the inner divine as a lion, an emblem of strength. Okay, so the inner divine has 4 faces, the 4 gospels. In Ezekiel, it's the same critters in Ezekiel are the critters assigned to the 4 gospels. So this is the lion, an emblem of strength, sovereignty, and princely achievement. Judah is the tribe of the lion. We find the ultimate 3 in the Holy Trinity, Father, Mother, Almighty, and this is a different kind of language, which is kind of cool. Father, Mother, Almighty, miracle-working air, and mystical holy breath of spirit present. Spirit and breath are the same word in Latin and in Greek. So, it's kind of a fun way to do it with it. So the number 3 has lots of mystical power associated with it. And the stone is chalcedony, and
Agate.
It's a form of agate.
I thought you said maggot. My head was down and I'm going.
A-G-A-T. Yesterday we were holding the most beautiful agate in a group that I was in. So the 3rd wall of the emerging place of peace, that is the New Jerusalem, right? That's what it means. Jerusalem, place of peace. Within and around us is described in Revelation as covered with chalcedony or copper emerald, which chalcedony signifies awakening strength. It's the love stone, translucent like the opal, always gleaming like the purity of the diamond, with the heavenly blue of the sapphire and the white light. And its blue finishes of wisdom and unchallenged peace, and the red gold of love. So you're going to see some combination of those in the chalcedony agate. And so that's, can you imagine a whole wall of a huge city in that kind of a stone? I mean, last week it was this white, pure white stone, and now this week, 12 walls, 12 sides. And the other piece isn't, I don't have it in there. In the tribes of Israel, it's the 2nd one. So then we get the apostle. This is the other Judas. This is the one that's known as Thaddeus. Okay?
Jude.
And this is St. Jude, right. And there is new, recent gospel material, the St. Jude gospel, the Gospel of Jude, that came out of the Nag Hammadi material. And so we're beginning to understand more about him. He's the son of James, and Judah, for what that means, Judah, means praising God. Yud and Ah. And Tada is open-hearted, fearless. So Thaddeus is commonly thought to be the author of the Epistle of Jude and represents the capacity to be fully open to life's experiences without being driven by a need for recognition. Blessed are the meek. And remember, being meek is having your soul focus on the divine. So that's why she picked that one up. And I don't need to read the rest of it. So that is lesson 3.